Thank you for joining us on the China On podcast. I'm your host, Chris, and today we're joined by Tammy Toney-Butler, and we're going to be talking about human trafficking. We're talking about the mechanisms of how it happens, how kids get taken advantage of on social media, and how people prey on them through that. So if you're a parent, especially if your kid's a little bit younger but starting to get into using social media, give this a listen. Even if you don't have to be afraid of everything in the world, know what ways that people are trying to reach out to them and possibly trying to recruit them for human trafficking. It's pretty sick shit, I got to be honest. So we dive through that, so just be prepared. And we talk through her past and how she's working with survivors now. And then Nurses United Against Human Trafficking. This is an organization that she started. She was a nurse for a long time. And just some alarming stats of how many victims of human trafficking actually go through the medical system and how many of them are not recognized. It's kind of mind-blowing. We also talk about some of the legislation that she's trying to pass. And we also go back through some of her past traumatic experiences with sexual abuse and trafficking, and how that makes her uniquely qualified to help people who are going through it now. So it's a long, pretty heavy interview, but I recommend don't shy away from it. If there's something that's been top of mind for you, give it a listen. At least make yourself aware of what stuff goes on out there, and let us know what you think. Reach out to us on podinbox.com/ChinaOn. Give us some feedback, leave some comments below, and we'll go from there. Please enjoy this conversation with Tammy Toney-Butler. Thanks. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate you taking the time to come do this. I know we got connected. We were just talking about this. I found you from an article. I can't remember exactly which one, but I read your story, and then I checked out your LinkedIn. I saw that you've got a background in nursing, and then now you're involved in legislation and a couple other things. A lot of it surrounding human trafficking and child trafficking. So if you don't mind, can you give everybody a quick introduction to who you are? And then I would like to dive into, it's a touchy subject, and I'll try to do my best to ask the questions around child trafficking and things like that. But yeah, if you can start with it, and then we'll see where it goes.
Well, I'm Tammy Toney-Butler. I was an ER nurse for almost 30 years, and that's all I did. I was in the trenches. And then I became a sexual assault nurse examiner, a forensic nurse examiner. And currently I have a ranch. I have a nonprofit. I work directly with survivors of human trafficking, childhood trauma. We provide them with their Maslow's basic hierarchy of needs, transportation costs, transitional housing if that's what's needed. And our goal is to eventually possibly have a tiny home village. But right now we are more of a retreat center, sanctuary. And I have 10 acres of land, and I have a cow that's 1,000 pounds, and I'm its mother. And, it's crazy, my life. I sold everything to kind of follow God, even my sailboat and my FJ Cruiser, and just literally everything. And my husband and I moved into a 576 square foot tiny home on 10 acres. And we just provide pro bono free services for survivors on their pathway to heal. And as you know, I am a survivor of sex trafficking. It's only when I wrote an article that was published in the National Library of Medicine on human trafficking, and my quest to get it right and to make sure that I gave survivors the appropriate voice and educated appropriately on it, that it hit me that what happened to me was actually human trafficking and not just multiple childhood sexual assaults. And then when that hit me, I realized that my mom would have been considered to be my trafficker. And I don't, it's pretty heavy stuff. So trigger warning, usually adult content. But I'm okay with that because my mom had her own trauma and she parented in survival mode, as most people do. And it was through my faith that Christ set me free. I mean, I don't have shame, guilt, fear, regret, food addiction. I don't need Ambien to get to sleep and a bottle of wine to wash it down. I just have a whole lot of Jesus.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. I just follow the Holy Spirit around, and I just love God and what he does and what he offers, and the hope and the peace that surpasses all understanding that God brings. That father I didn't have, because I lost my dad to suicide when I was about 15.
Okay.
He came back from Vietnam, wasn't the same, divorced my mom, became a police officer, and then he took his life with his weapon, and we buried him on Father's Day when I was about 15. So I've had a pretty raw set of cards dealt to me.
You have.
That's kind of heavy.
Yeah, that's okay though, and it's not funny. It's not the right. It's just interesting how sometimes going through those kind of experiences, do you feel like it helped set you up to be able to do the stuff that you're doing now?
Oh, absolutely. Trauma has a language of its own. How do you speak such atrocities and what happens to you, especially if you're a boy? Men, they struggle and they don't even reach out for help either. And every time I present, there's so many people that have never told anyone what happened to them as a child, because you're covered in shame and you feel like you're dirty.
Yeah.
But you're not. You're fearfully, beautifully, and wonderfully made, and that's just a lie. You're not, and you're not what happened to you. And there's hope. And because I went through all of that, because I'm on the other side, although you're never 100% on the other side, you're always working on yourself. I mean, I'm always, a mess, in some ways. I'm always working on myself and analyzing myself. But I've come so far, and there is hope. There's hope after addiction. There's hope after childhood trauma. There's hope after rape. There's hope after domestic violence. There's hope. And we see the negative, especially with social media and the influence that it's having on a generation, which is a lot of the legislative work I'm doing in Congress, is to try to get this session, this 118th Congress, legislation passed, the Protect Kids, on Social Media Act, COSA. There's so many different ones, and COPPA and the Earn It Act, to try to get some of this legislation in place to kind of rein in big tech. There's a place for technology in our world, but the Surgeon General just put out a warning and a big brief just saying how social media is really harming our children, and it's contributing to our youth suicide rates, which is like the second leading cause of death in our children. Where are we as a society if we don't protect our children, if we prioritize profits over people, profits over our kids? Our kids are our future. They're everything to us. And I wasn't protected. My mom did the best she could, but I wasn't protected, and I was opened up to horrible victimization. And we have to look at it too, because trauma impacts our gross healthcare expenditures. They contribute to our mental health crisis, our opioid crisis. It's a national security threat. We really have to realize that social media is being used as a platform of hate, and a platform also to sell drugs, to further drug cartels and other nefarious activity. So much so that even Ashley Moody's office and others are wanting Biden and the administration to call it a weapon of mass destruction, fentanyl. And let us realize that these are terrorist organizations, the drug cartels and others. So that's kind of the work I'm doing, is to try to realize that we have to act now and stop Twitter and Facebook and some of these other companies from the negative impacts that are affecting our children. Our young adults are vulnerable people.
And so is there trafficking going on through the social media platforms? Are they using it as a tool? These groups, are they using it as a tool for trafficking children?
Yes, well, what you realize is there's ads, just like there was when Backpage was shut down. There are ads on social media. You can, yes, you can buy sex with a child, on social media. You can, the predators go after and groom are vulnerable kids on social media. And there's this, there's sexting going on, there's sextortion, there is to where they're catfishing and they're and posing as another youth. They're posing as like a 14-year-old, but they're not. They're really maybe 35. And they're getting them to send images because you think, you're a boy, you got hormones, right?
Yeah.
Or a girl. And, you're 13, you're 14, your hormones are going crazy and you're curious and you don't have the prefrontal cortex capability in your brain to kind of understand, oh my gosh, what am I doing? And then you have the shame because they threaten to put it out to your family members. They threaten to put it out all over school. And what do you do? And so many of these kids are committing suicide because they don't have a way out or they feel like their life is over. And a lot of times they're blackmailing them. They're paying, these fees. They're stealing their parents' credit cards or debit cards or taking their allowance, and they're still releasing these images. The reports to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children have exponentially increased to a level that we can't handle. We just can't handle the massive content. They call it child sexual abuse material instead of child pornography because it's really crime scene photos. And so there's so much of it that we have to pass legislation now to stop it because there's not enough police to investigate it. There's not enough of child welfare, agencies to deal with the aftermath and with the mental health crisis.
Wait, so you mean that so you're saying there's like such an influx of, or such a production of child porn that like they can't keep up with it? Mm-hmm. So what does that mean in terms of numbers? Like just trying to wrap my head around.
It's very hard to wrap your head around this evil.
Yeah.
It's evil. It's bad. It's dark. We don't want to believe this is happening. But I need to tell your viewers, your listeners, whatever their appropriate terms are, is wake up. Because the predators, the controllers, the traffickers, they're going after your kids because you don't want to have the conversation with them about not sending images, about what are you doing online. We protect our children. We say, don't talk to strangers. Don't go out in the road. Lock your doors at night. You gave a child a cell phone at age 8, and you just brought the predator into the bedroom. And we have a problem. We have a problem because the traffickers, they're grooming kids, all the time. Those that are so vulnerable, the ones that are missing out for some reason, the marginalized, the LGBTQI, in questioning, or those that maybe are being raised by grandparents. Maybe they lost their parents to drug addiction, or they're couch surfing, they're homeless kids. And the predators are going after them. And when we put it in terms, human trafficking, and this is actually probably not even accurate much because it's statistics that come out of the International Labor Organization from like last year, but the real data I think came from like 2017, 2018. But it's like $150 billion industry.
I think I've even heard that number be higher.
Yes, and it is. And that's the thing is human trafficking, we don't know the true extent of it. But you can sell a drug or a gun once, but you can sell a human being over and over again. And the funding, terrorist organization, organized crime groups, they had to come up with creative funding streams after 9/11. And so it's quite lucrative to trade in human beings, whether it's labor trafficking, whether it's sex trafficking, whether you smuggle them in. And we do have a border crisis where they are being smuggled in and they are being sex trafficked after, or labor trafficked after they're smuggled into the country. And Human smuggling, it's a crime against borders, whereas human trafficking is not really you don't have to have transportation involved. You can be trafficked out of your own home.
And that's what I've heard. And that's part of what I wanted to ask you about was the mechanism for it, because you hear about the border, and for us, it seems far away. For most of Americans, it's like we don't live in a border state, and that's kind of like a far away thing. And it seems very political on both sides, and whatever your take is. So there's a way for you to push it away as if like, hey, that's somewhere else. I'm guilty of it too. There's only so many things that a regular person can control or think about all the time. But I've heard that a lot of it goes on from family members, or it's people nearby, or it can be in your community and somebody knows that you don't have a strong family unit, so they'll kind of prey on you and almost pimp you out from while you're still living with your parents. I've heard that too. Like, what are some of the mechanisms that this happens?
Well, the movie Sound of Freedom just, came out. It's a great movie. You should go see it. Operation Underground Railroad helped with Tim Ballard with putting it out. There's been controversy on that movie on both sides of the in the anti-trafficking world, because they say it's kind of like the movie Taken, and it doesn't give a true depiction of human trafficking. But it is human trafficking in other countries. In the United States, you don't have as much of the snatching of kids and things. I'm sure that there's some out there,
Sure.
But that's not what's predominant. What's predominant is the Romeo. They feel a need. You're so beautiful. You could be a model. I know you're leaving home and you don't have anywhere to go. You're like 17 and you're sleeping on couches because your parents have kicked you out. You come stay with me, I'll hook you up. And they prey off the insecurities that are in these kids. Because just like I was looking for love in all the wrong places, okay? Let me tell you. And I had a problem. I slept around a whole lot trying to find my father, a father figure, and fill that void that I never had. And so that opened me up to predatory behavior, abusive relationships. And our kids, they need love, they need acceptance, and we are so busy as a society. And you brought up a good point. It's like, I don't want to hear this. This isn't happening to me. I don't care if you're a Democrat, if you're a Republican, if you're white or black, rich or poor. It doesn't matter. If you're atheist, if you're not, if you believe in Jesus like I do, it doesn't matter. This is about God's kids. This is about children who are being annihilated. Our kids are under attack. And wake up, world, because they're being smuggled in. Individuals are coming in, or drugs are being smuggled through the borders, and they get into transportation, they get on our highways, and they end up in your small town. They get on the I-10 corridor, they get on I-90, they are in Florida. They're coming. If you think that you're insulated from drug cartels, if you think you're insulated from opioids, if you think you're insulated from the threat of human trafficking, you are wrong. And you must wake up. We have to pass legislation this session in Congress. We cannot wait another day. When you look at our mental health crisis, when you look at our gross healthcare expenditures again, when you look at our overburdened judicial systems, when you look at so many co-occurring crises all coming together at once, you add in the climate crisis. I mean, we are baking in Florida. It's so hot. And so many people are fleeing these migrating to escape terrorist regimes, to escape these, drug cartels, or to find, a more formidable climate. And so they're migrating and they're coming. And we do need to control our borders. We do need to watch what's coming in, because when the drugs are coming in, they're also trading in guns. They're coming. It's increasing the violence in our neighborhoods. And our poor police officers, I mean, the amount of guns that they're up against and the assault weapons and all of these, mass shootings, all of this kind of ties in. And we have to realize the impact that the internet, social media platforms, communication devices are playing in the spread of this hate, these platforms, and it's creating a new. They call it typology of offending or offenders. It's creating a different kind of criminal. I mean, look at your serial killer that's up in Long Island, and look at the ties there. Look at the Tinder app and different platforms that were used there in the commission of that crime that they're saying. All you have to do is look at the headlines, look at the news, but there's hope. We have to act, and we have to pass legislation now. Everybody needs to contact their senators, their Congress folks, and say, okay, whatever it is with child, human trafficking, with social media, we need to control it. And quite frankly, the age needs to be raised to 16, just like it is for smoking. There's an age, just like it is for seatbelts and putting seatbelts and kids buckling them in car seats, and it is when you ride a ATV or UTV or the golf carts, because that poor crisis we just had recently with the deaths of the child from the golf cart. And the fact that we're going to pass legislation to raise the age limit of getting on a golf cart. And we have to realize that how's big tech been reined in? How's social media been reined in? Do they verify that you're 13? No, they don't. And they don't take down the child sexual abuse material once a parent calls them or finally gets someone on the phone to say, yeah, there's a case, the Haba law firm, Lisa Haba, and them's working with NCOSE, the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. There's a lot of cases to where parents, Twitter case and others, that they can't get them to take down the content in a timely manner. They're not. A lot of these platforms are not even screening appropriately, or they're using moderators that are volunteer moderators, and they're not doing background checks. And there has to be. It's time now, just like back with the Industrial Revolution, we had to pass laws, we had to put safeguards in place, even in the automobile industry, to protect us. And of course, the tech companies want to say that this is CDA 230, this is a communications problem. They want to hide behind this clause from the Communications Decency Act. But what they have to really, realize is it's not a technology issue. It's a public policy issue, just like putting a seatbelt in a car. Just like you guys, I think you work for Vanguard, and and I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say that, but you do.
Yeah, or Vessel Vanguard.
Vessel Vanguard. Yep. And, just like, there's safeguards in things that you guys manufacture. There's safeguards in boats. There's safeguards in cars to protect us. There's no seatbelt for the internet. And parents are overwhelmed, and they don't know how to stop their kids from being on it continuously. It's addictive, the screen time. And most of the parents, they didn't want to have their kids put on social media, but when COVID hit, many of them said yes. And they let them get on earlier than they'd ever dreamed that they were going to. Because what did we all do? We were going nuts with COVID. We were under house arrest. Yeah. So what do you do as a parent? I mean, you've got kids. What do you do? Yeah. So now they don't know how to take it away. Well, we need to pass a law that says you're not gonna use it, and we need to take the choice and be the bad guy. And I'll be the bad guy if we need to.
So all right, if we can we? You mentioned several pieces of legislation. So if we can go through them, so I can kind of understand what they are, and then also I want to try to understand what the problem is that each is addressing. So, what's the list of them, and then we can kind of dive into each.
Well, you've got the Earn It Act, and it stands for this big old long eliminating. I forget. It's this big long word that's not coming to me right now. But we abbreviated the Earn It Act, and what that does is it was reintroduced this Congress, and it it basically provides a platform to be able to report suspected cases, to be able to get it taken down in a timely manner, to have like a best practices commission, to have a pathway for survivors for justice to seek civil recourse against these companies. And it clarifies Section CDA 230 of the Communications Decency Act so that they can't kind of hide behind it and say that they aren't publishers of the content, because it's on their platform. They are. And also it gives relief for the National Center on Missing and Exploited Children to kind of help them with this massive load of child sexual abuse material. They use different technologies to get into that, to try to hashtags and everything else. And all of this, if you go to the Congress.gov, the website, and you put in the Earn It Act, or you put in Protect Kids on Social Media Act, or Kids Online Safety Act, Senator Blackburn and Blumenthal, that they're really, and Lindsey Graham, they're pretty active in these spaces. And Schatz's office, Senator Schatz's office, contacted me to add my expert opinion input, because I have humbly, been an expert, retained as an expert witness in a human trafficking case against the porn companies. And Schatz's team contacted me to look at the Protect Kids on Social Media Act. And, it raises the age, or is saying that the age is 13. I think the age should be 16. And because it with what's going on with our kids, the minimal age needs to be 16. And then it looks at, parental consent and verifying that a kid is really a kid, that you're really of the age to open this account, because so many kids are on social media. And the age is supposed to be 13, but they
just lie.
They just lie. Yeah. I mean, all you do is you put
born in 1985.
Yeah, a fake birthday. You just put it in. I made the mistake one time of creating a profile and put that I was like 1 year old or something. So that was really hard to try to get that corrected. But it's pretty easy to do that. And so they all just kind of put safeguards in place and try to stop the internet and social media from being used as a place to groom and harm our children, and to spread this pornographic content. And the U.S. is the number one consumer
what I've heard
of the content. And it's offenders are from, you have kids that are perpetrating abuse against other kids. You have they say pornography is like a gateway into human trafficking and other things, and it's also contributing. People are viewing porn and kids, and they're getting the wrong idea of a relationship, of what is okay. And just like any drug, you get addicted to porn, and so you seek out more egregious, violent content.
Sure.
And it's happening. I mean, it's horrible what's happening to 1-year-olds, infants, others. The sexual assaults and things that are happening to these kids is just horrible. And it is so dark.
For porn?
Oh, yeah, for everything. I mean, our kids are being used as sexual toys and pawns, and to satisfy the physical needs or whatever needs of the perpetrator, of the predator. And we have to wake up. We post pictures of our kids all the time on social media. We post it in bathing suits, and we post their location. We post, Cypress Middle School. I don't even know if that's even a middle school. I just made that up. But we post where they are, what grade they're in.
Yeah.
The romance scams, everything going on, it is not safe in the digital space. And then you add in artificial intelligence, Web 3.0, the metaverse. And we haven't even reined in, the initial social media. There was a case back in, maybe around in the 90s or something, where they were, and that's how Section CDA 230 kind of came about, because there was some organizations that were being sued because they were actually saying, this is pretty bad content. We're going to moderate it. We're going to control what's being put out. And they were getting sued and being held liable. So they just turn a blind eye, because if they turn a blind eye and they don't look at it or really moderate it the way it should, then I can't be held accountable.
Oh, so it's a precedent set by people initially trying to do the right thing, but hopefully it was for that intent. But then once you try to do that, then you get penalized. And then as these things grow and they scale, they're like, oh, we'll just use this as a way to avoid liability.
Well, and legislation was passed by our congressional leaders to allow them to do that. That's how CDA 230 came about. Because
do you think money had anything to do?
Oh, what profiteth a man if he gains the whole world and loses his soul?
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is we are prioritizing profits over children. Now, I'm a woman of faith, and that's not good, because where you do that and where you don't respect children and you don't respect human life like that, then destruction is to follow.
Oh, it's amazing how many things can fall off. Just and even if your kid doesn't get exposed to child porn or being a victim of any of these things, it's being inattentive as a parent or any of these things. Like you can see in people. I notice this more as I grow up, but the better that you do as a parent, the more you mitigate some of the big issues that can really pop up and sometimes ruin people's lives. It's amazing the impact that parenting and like giving kids a good early life. It's amazing the impact that can have. I don't know. It's just derail us a little bit, but yeah, it is. I don't know. It becomes more real as I get older.
And you didn't derail us, because there's something called PACES science, and that's positive adverse childhood, experiences. And I don't have a lot of memories from what happened, to me. But the positive memories that I do have a few memories, and they're positive, like when folks from local churches would help us as kids, or one bought us a bicycle, I can remember, when I was growing up. And that's the work that we do on our ranch too, is we work with 2 generations, 3 generations even. We just had a summer event, and we had survivors and their kids out, or their grandkids, and we just pour in them and love them, recognizing that trauma affects everyone. And I too, you parent in survival mode. And so many people out there dealing with their own trauma are not really dealing with it, because what do? You become a workaholic, or either you struggle with addiction, because what's addiction? It's just coping. It's a way to cope from something so awful that you can't find any other way, and you just need the weight of it to lift off of you for just a second, and you'll do anything to just get a moment of peace. And so many parents are that way, and then they're struggling with their own mental health to where it's really hard for them to be present. Mm-hmm. And then you add in the ease of here's your phone, go ahead. Yeah. And we've lost the art of, like you and I right now are doing, sitting across from each other and communicating. Our kids, if you watch them, if you look around when you're in a mall, if you look at the school,
they're all like this.
My husband's a school resource deputy for, Collier County Sheriff's Office, and he will tell you they're in their phones, and they aren't really engaged like they need to be. And we really have to limit that and get back to teaching them about relationships, just what you were saying, and being present. And if you, as a dad, if you see kids in your neighborhood or others, and there's a single mom, or there's somebody that's struggling, then say, hey, yes, and let's reparent by committee. And a lot of what happened to me too was my mom not having a lot of money. And what made my case human trafficking is when I went to my mom, and I was telling her that I was being sexually assaulted. I think it started in kindergarten or early on. And he, and I said, said what he was doing to me. And her words were, how will I pay the rent? What will I do? How will I survive? You know, I don't work. I have a nerve problem. And so that's where the commercial exchange became, and how it became human trafficking, or would be. It was never tried like that. You know,
Sure.
he went away for sexual molestation. It's child rape. I don't know why they call it sexual molestation. But I didn't tell what happened to me, and I didn't tell my mom. I lied. I mean, you know, you're a kid. What are you going to do? You know, when the police come to you, you're going to protect your family, because how do you choose between your mother? How do you put your mom in jail? I mean, then you're going to go into the child welfare system. And I spent one day in a group home or two before my principal bailed me out. And I don't know where I would be if I had stayed in the juvenile system like that. So many kids are struggling. So, you know, we need to really invest in our kids, our 18 to 24-year-olds, those that are aging out of foster care, those unkids, those throwaways. You know, I don't know where I'd be without key people in my life that helped me along the way, school teachers and others. And that's what we do. We try to bridge that gap. And, you know, I hope to have land somewhere and have that tiny home village and just say, hey, come here and stay rent-free, figure it out, go to school, but you'll be protected. Here's all your Maslow's basic hierarchy of needs. Just be. Now, you do that, and some kids still will choose the dark, but there's a lot that'll choose the light. But at least they have the choice. And the predator, the gangs, the drug cartels, all those folks out there, they're going to get our kids. So it's up to us. Are we going to protect our kids as a community? Are we going to just turn a blind eye, go back to sleep, go shop, go about our normal lives, and forget the kids that are being raped, the $150 billion industry, which is much more than that, and the dark? What are we going to do? Are we going to wake up as a community? Are we going to wake up in Washington? Are we going to actually pass legislation this Congress? Or are we just going to sit and talk? That's what I want. I want action. Words mean nothing to me. Many people told me they'd keep me safe, but they didn't. I wasn't safe with the babysitter. Free babysitting, but I was what got the free babysitting. And it's these choices, you know, people coming to single moms especially to just ease their burden, you know, like, I'll babysit for you, you know, I'm here to help you. That darkness, that wolf always comes as an angel of light. He always comes in, or he or she, to help, you know, relieve a burden and make your life easier. And we have to have our guard up. But we as a community, as churches, as we need to put social structures in place to help with after school programs that are taking care of our other things. And it's a complex issue, but we can tackle it. There's hope. I mean, I don't have a food addiction anymore. I've lost like 60 pounds. I'm healthy. I'm happy. I don't need, you know, whine like crazy to get to sleep. I don't cuss anymore. I don't do anything I used to do anymore. I mean, I hear you used to cuss, but guess what? You haven't cussed this whole program.
Trying to be good.
I know. I used to cuss like a sailor in the ER. You know, I worked at Naples Community Hospital and in that system for so many years. And but now, you know, since I'm on this spirit-filled journey with God, and I'm really just kind of go where He sends me, and just am sold out for Him and His kids and survivor reform. I don't know. It's a changed life, and anybody can have that changed life. But we have to plant the seeds of hope, seeds of love.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny how the timing works out, because I just interviewed a guy that runs a ketamine clinic, and it's like psychedelic assisted therapy. And some of the most interesting things that he was talking about has been the success with soldiers and helping with PTSD and helping to overcome that. And he was even talking about a story where a guy came in and was like, look, man, I've tried everything. He's like, if this doesn't work, I'm just going to kill myself. Just want you to know that before we start this. It's like, okay, give me like a couple sessions at least. Just give it one, but give it a couple. And after that initial session going through, he was like, look, man, I don't want to hurt myself anymore. Like it gave him the chance, whatever the mechanism was, but to step back from that trauma, process it, and then realize that, okay, some of these things weren't his fault. Like, and he, with some of these things, you can kind of forgive yourself. So it's, it's weird that psychedelics have, they had their time in the 60s and then people went kind of crazy. But like, it's interesting now seeing the way that people are applying that and how that can be yet another way that people can start to get past the trauma and get past the things that ultimately block them. Because I'm looking at your situation too, like, and sorry to put it this way, but with your dad committing suicide, he probably had some form of what would now be called PTSD for that, and the treatment and the help wasn't there. So it's like it's not even his fault. It's like that wasn't in the psyche at that point. And now we're starting to see these tools emerge now at the same time, kind of when we need them. But if he was able to get that help initially, that might have changed the trajectory of his life, of your life. It might have never opened up these situations that ultimately, led to this stuff. I could be completely wrong in the timeline, so please, I apologize, but it's just, it's interesting that now people are talking about that side of it, of like dealing with trauma, finding other ways to deal with it, trying to get past it. So again, I'm taking us in a different direction, but it just reminds me of when as a dad, I've got a daughter who's basically a year and a half, a little older than that, and another son on the way. I look at that, sometimes you think selfishly, but I see things like this of, oh man, I have got to get my shit together. It doesn't really matter if I'm feeling off today or these kind of things. I need to take care of that, but I also need to make sure they're protected. I need to be there for her. I got to be present. Like I feel like when I see this stuff, it's a reminder for me to get back to work. Like I have to protect her. I got to protect my family. I don't know. It kind of helps keep me on the straight and narrow.
And so many people want to do that. And before I go with that point, I'm a fan of holistic. I know, a little bit about the ketamine, but I don't know about, the study and the work that gentleman is doing to, either endorse that or not. But what I've found on my ranch is getting in nature, being mindful in the moment, creating safe, non-judgmental atmospheres to tell the most dark things that have happened to you. Or just to sit and be quiet in that space, even if you don't utter a word. And my husband just had me watch a movie or a documentary with a bunch of sailors and vets that had gotten out of the military because they didn't have a program. They're just like, okay, you're out. And there were so many of them killing themselves. And this gentleman started sailing and went off of Cape Horn and ended up getting soldiers, and he started a charity. I forget the name of it. It's a great documentary, but it's really going out in these extreme conditions on this sailboat and realizing that you're not what happened to you. But it's almost when you're focused on like that task of not drowning on a sailboat or engaging in the activities on our land, you're kind of setting the pause button and being still.
Okay.
And then so many of our kids, like or adults, because we work with adults and kids, you want to get them in an activity because it calms their amygdala. And it's not, traditional therapy doesn't really, to me, work. But if you walk with them or if you mend a fence with them or, work with our cows or whatever, then you can create an opportunity for them to engage and maybe talk about some of these things. And human trafficking survivors, survivors of child sexual exploitation, abuse, they have PTSD at the extent of war veterans also. And so we have to really understand the impact that trauma has had. Adverse childhood experiences are contributing to early cardiovascular events in women, stroke and heart attacks.
I bet because of stress, just
stress,
like chronic stress.
Yes, and cancers, suicide, addiction, and it can be traced back. So what the work that I do is I have a free healing ministry, is we trace it back to get to the root. and then we deal with the root. A lot of times it is a neglect, an abandonment, a sexual assault, something that happened in childhood. I mean, you have, sadly, because of the opioid pandemic, you have parents that are trafficking and selling their kids for a drug.
Oh.
Okay, so we have to understand that anything of value, it's a drug, it's a place to sleep. It can be a carton of Marlboro Red cigarettes or something. I mean, anything that's exchanged, it can be status in a gang. It can be a promotion. Anything that is used as a commercial gain can be considered, sex trafficking if a commercial sex act is involved. And there are parents that are pimping out their kids early and allowing predators to gain access to them, to film them, to hurt them, and they're videoing it. And they're doing it for drugs. And what are the traffickers? What are the controllers doing? They're preying on their addiction. So they're either getting them addicted and using the drugs to coerce them into being compliant with being sexually assaulted many times a day and doing these sex acts, or they are using it as a means to entice them in, and then they get in a debt bondage situation. Human trafficking, exploitation, all of that is wholeheartedly contributing to the opioid crisis and the pandemic that we find ourselves in. And so you're right with the positive experiences. You're right. But I think, getting in nature, being mindful in the moment, creating environments that allow us to just chill and get away from all the stimulus. Turn your phones off, just sit for 15 minutes in silence and just let your body come down and stop that hormonal dump that's happening. And if you've been victimized, if you've had a prior trauma, then you're more likely that you are going to be a victim of another trauma later on, or of a crime, or get sexually assaulted again, because your sense of how to spot a predator is kind of off, and how to spot danger. And so that's kind of some of the work that we do is you boundary set, because what do predators and controllers and traffickers and folks do? They come in and try to erode our boundaries.
That's true.
Because we would normally say no, like parents on social media, no, and then COVID hit. And so the boundary, the lines were crossed. And that's what, and it doesn't take much. Well, my child can't stay out past 9, but then this nice parent, wants them to stay out till 10, and they start changing you. And they get these kids and a lot of times to groom them and get them, they help them or entice them to commit petty crimes. So there's burglaries, there's thefts, they'll make them go into a 7-Eleven and steal something. And then they use that against them, or they use their immigration status against them. Well, I'm going to report you, if you don't do what I've asked you to do. So any power and control situation, that's how a situation of human sex trafficking or labor trafficking, that power dynamic can occur. And it's brainwashing. It's, human trafficking is not like those movies with the chains around the arms and the legs typically. It is chains around the brain. And I co-founded Nurses United Against Human Trafficking, and we have a comprehensive training curriculum that educates healthcare providers, nurses, and doctors and everything. It's all accredited, and it goes into these in-depth ways to identify, a victim of human trafficking.
So what would that be? Like, I know that, and it looked like a whole full course for law enforcement. But just what are some of those things that you would look for?
When we talk about kids, if they're truant, if they're falling asleep in class, if they're in the possession of multiple cell phones, multiple prepaid debit cards or credit cards, if they're showing up, or multiple hotel keys, if they're showing up with expensive purses, lots of cash, and even more than our teens, if they're starting to have these things that they never had before. Friends coming around with very expensive cars. This is Naples, Bonita. I mean, this is an affluent area, so you have some of that anyway. Mm-hmm. But individuals that haven't really had that, and then they're showing up, or they're, like I said, they're missing class. change in behavior. Maybe they're depressed. Maybe they have an eating disorder. They're suicidal, opioid, any type of addiction. We need to be screening, for human trafficking, especially in our adolescents. We need to be talking to them about sextortion and deep fakes. I mean, they're taking pictures we're putting, on the internet of our kids, and they're putting them in pornographic reels.
Oh, okay.
So, we have to really understand that it is not safe on the web. It's not safe out there. And we need safeguards put in place to protect all of us because we're busy. We're busy parents, and we need regulation on some of these things. And it's not about, I'm not a political person. I'm a person that needs to protect these kids and survivors, and we need to stop mass producing victims on a scale that we can't handle. And so I'm for passing legislation this Congress, and we all need to come together as a country and unite as parents, as individuals, and say enough's enough, and we're going to draw a line in the sand, and America is going to protect its kids. We're going to be the beacon of light on that dark hill. We're going to protect our kids.
So the earn it, that's for the ability for these companies to actually go through, or for Congress or whatever the mechanism is, but to hold these companies accountable to say, hey, once you identify that this is on the platform, you need to identify it, you need to remove it in a timely fashion. It's got to come down. So that, in a nutshell, is that the purpose of the Earn It?
It sets up a best practices commission. It brings a lot of people to the table and to get the conversation and to make sure that the right people are regulating. It brings some regulation. It also looks at CDA 230. It clarifies it so that platforms can be held accountable, because right now all these lawsuits are being thrown out of the Supreme Court, or they're being thrown out of regular courts because they're hiding behind CDA 230. So it doesn't matter. This person on a Tinder app was stalked and feared for his life, and fake profiles and things were put out. It doesn't matter that he was hurt. They are saying they have no civil recourse. So it basically allows them to have the ability to be sued and held accountable. But now if they do what's right, you don't have everybody out there suing the automobile industry and other industries, because if you do what's right and you do what's morally acceptable, well, the problem is they're deciding what's ethical. They're deciding what's morally acceptable. You can't do that if you're profiting from it.
Yeah.
You can't set your own rules. It doesn't work that way. So this creates a best practices commission, just like in the automobile industry, just like in the tobacco industry. We have to act now and just put regulation and safeguards in place. It's no different than, when we had the child locks in the cars and the windows, so that the kids won't get locked in, or the trunk latch and things that cars had to put in. You have deaths, you have things that happen. And there's a lot of deaths and things that are happening. Kids are buying drugs off of social media too. It's being used as a platform to distribute narcotics.
Yeah.
And it's a virtual street corner with a lot of the prostitution and things that are going on. And there are no child prostitutes. You can't consent to be a part of a commercial sex act. So they're just victims under law and fall under mandatory reporting guidelines if they're under the age of 18. Yes, there's gray areas, but if we see something, we need to say something. We need to report it to the Department of Homeland Security. There's a tip line at dhs.gov. The National Human Trafficking Training and Resource Center is where you can get victim support. If you see something actively going on, you can call 911. You can call the suicide helpline if you need that. But you don't want to ever actively try to stop a trafficking situation if you suspect something, because you could get hurt or hurt that person. So, if you suspect something, you would want to engage law enforcement. And we have to educate healthcare providers appropriately. We have to educate law enforcement. We need survivor voices like mine, as a lived experience expert. We need someone that speaks the language of trauma. And we need regulation in this space. And this is a year. This is a year that it's going to be done. I have no doubt this is the year that we are going to move that mountain in Congress.
And what are the other acts that are going through? You mentioned there's Earn It and what else?
KOSA, Kids Online Safety Act.
Okay.
So KOSA, the Kids Online Safety Act. And then there's the Protect Kids on Social Media Act.
Okay.
And there's a couple of others. If you go to our Nurses United Against Human Trafficking page, legislative page, there's links on there. And you can also, reach out to me and email me. You can find my information at, www.reflectivespacesministry.com. You can Google Tammy Toney-Butler and you'll find something about me and where to find me, and I'll be happy to assist with that dialogue. You can go to congress.gov, the sites, and there's links to where you can email your senators right there. They already have prefabbed letters. The Federation of the General Federation of Women's Clubs, I think they have a link on their website that goes directly to legislators. Shared Hope International probably does. I know the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children would, as well as the National Center for Sexual Exploitation. All those links would be found. You can call the Southwest Florida, Coalition Against Human Trafficking that serves our area. Janet does an amazing job with that organization. There's so many of us in this space that, Into the Jordan Ministries and our ministries and others, Wings of Shelter and others that are just doing a really phenomenal job in this space and looking after these kids. And this is a dark secret. It's out there. It's happening. And we need to wake up. We need to start educating in the schools. Paving the Way Foundation does a phenomenal job of educating in the school systems. So there's so many, ways that you can help. Obviously, we're nonprofits, so we take donations, and that's always a good thing. And but yeah, that's kind of where the conversation starts.
Got it. And so I was curious, why Nurses Against United Human Trafficking? Like, I know that you're a former nurse, but is there something in particular about like nursing? Do you see this kind of stuff, or what? Yes,
that is a phenomenal question. Well, we formed a professional association. I would love to tell you that I thought it up, but God thought up everything, and I'm just a sinner from a trailer park. I should not be. I spoke at the United Nations on human trafficking, all this stuff. I look at my CV and I'm like, who is this person? And it's all God. Every door was open because of God and my faith. None of that is in my own power. So we formed Nurses United Against Human Trafficking because Dr. Laura Lederer, she put out a study back, I forget, like 2014, Lederer and Weltsel, and they said like 88% of human trafficking victims are going into emergency departments, and I'd say it's even higher, or into the OB clinics, or engaging with healthcare staff, and they are not being identified. And they're not being mandatory reported if they're a minor, and we have to do that. We have a legal obligation to report. And so they aren't spotting it, they aren't identifying it. And so we, my co-founder and I, formed that to educate appropriately the healthcare force, because there are boots on the ground. There's millions of nurses. There are soldiers in this fight, and we have to engage them, because we have to be able, if that kid comes in, plant that seed, figure it out. If it's, report it. If it's a minor, if it's an adult, at least let them know what's happening to them is wrong. And they are part of our sexual assaults that we're missing. And we aren't offering them the appropriate services. We are not caring for them the way that they need to be cared for, because their needs, their standards of care are different than any other population. So much like in the 1980s when HIV and AIDS came out, and we knew that we had a problem and we had to act, but we had no idea what we were going to do as a healthcare community. We're there now with human trafficking. We have to act. We have to engage. We have to put protocols in all 50 states and U.S. territories, and that's part of what we have with Nurses United. We have a complete training curriculum already ready to roll out. It's been translated. It's accredited. for physicians, for doctors. I think radiologists is coming. It's getting our accreditation for that. We have internet crimes, against children detected that did an amazing, module for us. So it's a comprehensive learning curriculum, much like the American Heart Association's, ACLS and PALS, and that protects your heart. We have built a product that is superior to be able to identify, educate, and equip on human trafficking. And half the proceeds, I came off the board. I co-founded it, but I came off the board, and Dr. Bonaneri, Francine Bonaneri, runs it. She's the president, because 50% of the proceeds go directly to my nonprofit, Reflective Spaces Ministry for Direct Victim Services, so that we can give survivors the things that they need, the tools they need in their tool chest to be successful, to be able to process their trauma, much like veterans coming out of war and not saying, go work a 9-to-5 job right now.
Good luck.
Good luck, fit in. Sorry, you're going to have anger issues and all that, because that's what goes along with trauma. You figure it out while trying to, be the breadwinner for your family. We want to create those spaces to where everything's taken care of so that they can just be in process. And, everybody's journey is different. People want to say, well, how many did you push through? And, how well are they doing? And why is it taking so long? It takes as long as it needs to take.
Yeah.
And it may be that they finally speak and they haven't spoken in 2 years, or they finally are able, like me, to sleep with the lights on, off. I had the doors locked and the light on for so many years. I mean, I'm 50-something years old, and it was only when I was in my 40s that I stopped locking every door in the house and turning on, and was able to sleep with the lights off.
Really?
Because fear is so powerful. Mm-hmm. And this whole world is on fear. Well, you don't need fear. There's no fear in perfect love. There's no fear in Christ. There's no fear. You don't have to live that way. And I had no idea until the chains were broken and lifted off of me and I got set free, of how I wasn't living. I was dead. I was walking like a zombie.
Really?
Just existing.
And did you have, if you don't mind me asking, did you have anger issues? And what did all this stuff kind of, I don't know, manifest as? Like, what did it come out as? Such
a great question. Trauma manifests in behavior. So if your kid starts acting out or there's a change in behavior, your first question is not to say, listen, and judge them. It is, what is wrong? Instead of saying what is wrong with you, we need to come from the lens of what happened to you and work our way away from that. And we need to say what happened to you, because I cursed. I mean, my mouth was horrible. I had so much fear. Oh my goodness. My husband will tell you, when we got that sailboat, I would get catatonic and hide in the corner of the boat because I had just had enough. I would shut down. You can shut down, just like women who've been raped because of the hormonal dump. They can't fight back even if they want to. It's called the neurobiology of trauma. Everybody needs to look it up. You need to know about trauma, what it does, and cut yourself some slack and realize you couldn't have fought back if you wanted to. Some of those things you eat, you cope. I was addicted to food. I was addicted to sex. I was addicted to everything. And I affected a generation because I wasn't able to parent the way I should. And, in we parent from survival mode, or we don't parent. We don't. And we can't, because we're just overwhelmed. Our cup is full. And it's like I do a presentation on trauma, and I have rocks and an apron, and I put the rocks in it. And I walk around because you're just with this weight of it. And then when it's lifted off of you, you feel so free. But you have trouble sleeping. You have insomnia. People work so they become workaholics, or they have that savior complex. They want to save everybody.
Yep.
Pete Walker has a really good book out that looks at trauma Thurman. I forgot her first name suddenly. She has a really good book out. There's some really good books on trauma, but people don't realize, as a society, think about Hurricane Ian, what we just went through. Okay, I went through that thing huddled in a shed for 24 hours alone. We were in the eye wall. We never got to eye. We were just in the whole thing the whole time. Now, my husband was working, so I went through that by myself. Me and God, me and Jesus got through that. And there's no way I could have done that without my faith. And think of the people that were so traumatized already going into that. And then you had that. And then, of course, we know natural disasters increase, trafficking and exploitation afterwards because people are just trying to survive. And some of their livelihoods have been wiped out. So we really have to understand trauma, historical trauma, generational trauma. Some of our historical trauma and racism that's gone on and other things. We have to understand that words matter. Words hurt. Words can be used as construction sites or demolition sites. So how are we going to choose? Are we going to use our words to build up people, or are we going to use them to tear down folks? That person that's angry at the gas station, that person that's angry at the bank, maybe they're coming in screaming in your emergency department and they're all in your face because your kid just came in from a car wreck. But you don't realize that that person maybe lost their child and now their son was in a wreck and they've gone immediately to the trauma and they've acted out because they were triggered,
Yeah.
Trauma affects people and we can rage. We can get so angry and we don't even know. I would cuss you out and cut you down, and I knew that wasn't me because I have a kind heart, and the things that would come out of my mouth were horrific if someone had heard me. I was so bitter, so angry, so pissed off and mad. And really, I helped renovate the Path to Freedom Safe House, and when I was volunteering with that charity before I formed my own, and I tell you, it was in the work and the hammering and the mudding and the taping, and even now with me cutting out pepper hedges, I do my own landscaping and we build our own fences, and it's just doing that work to where one day I just realized the anger was gone and I wasn't pissed off anymore. And I met a radical guy named Jesus. I take that from a colleague. I'm using his term. But when you have that encounter and it changes your whole life, it's just amazing. And so it's just, there's darkness, but there's hope. And we need people to see that there's hope.
And what was that process like of, if you don't mind me asking, like how did that come about?
Let's see. I wrote that article. I was helping with build a publishing company at the time to provide free education around the world for people. And that was probably 2019. No, I'm sorry. I wrote that article maybe back in 2016, 17. And that was not a good time for me. When I realized that it was human trafficking, what happened to me, and my mom would have been considered my trafficker, and I really started having flashbacks. I started having panic attacks. And I just threw myself into being a wounded healer. I said, I'll just be an ER nurse and heal everybody else. I'll work 60 hours a week. I'm good. I don't have any issues.
Oh, okay. So
I shelved it.
Oh.
It was only since 2019 that I shed my little girl that happened to. Because what we do is we try to protect her or him, right? Because no one protected her. So I held on to her. But we don't have to hold on to that person anymore. Well, Christ died on the cross. And so, he carries the darkness and the shame and the guilt and all that. We don't have to do all that. We just have to surrender and let it go. Realize we can't control it. We never could. We can't protect that person. We never could. And I had to let go of that little girl because the shame, the guilt, the fear, the insomnia, the addictions were all tied to her. But I didn't want to let her go because how do you do life? I was molded in a womb of trauma. I was shaped in trauma. My mother had been traumatized and had gone through so much. So all I ever knew was trauma. Even now, I don't know how thin I'm supposed to be. I don't know when I'm going to get to a goal weight. I don't know what I'm supposed to be because I've always had a food addiction or had issues, and now I don't have any of that. And so I don't know who I'm becoming. I'm in kind of a new wineskin, and it's really cool because it's only since 2019 and each year gotten better, and this past year really, really evolved even more, and the fear's gone. Like I go out there and I herd my cow, and God put me in a pasture with 10 horses and like, go take a chair, sit down, the Holy Spirit. And, no, I don't hear you. Not the audible voice of God. Don't don't commit me, but the Holy Spirit, you have this whisper, and
Sure.
and I had to get rid of my fear, and I had to work through all this so I could help the others come through. And so everything's because of my faith. I owe everything to God. And that is where I see the biggest change in survivors is when I get them closer to God. Because I'm a human, I'm fallible. I don't need you to see me. I'm not here in my own power right now. I'm here because of God and Christ and what He's done in my life. And that is it. And I need you to see Him. I need you to realize addiction can be broken, depression. You don't have to feel that way. And you are not dirty, and you didn't do anything wrong. And yes, you have gone to war to serve our country, or you were raped as a child. You suffered something, and maybe you had to kill someone in your line of duty as a police officer. Maybe you feel helpless because you couldn't save that kid from a burning building. But you don't have to feel that way. You don't have to feel that way because that's not on you. Those are things we can't control. And we have to let all that go. We can't carry that on us. We can't have that savior complex. And we have to cut ourselves some slack and give ourselves a break. And we aren't dirty. We're beautiful. If He can raise me up, put me on the platforms He's put me on, done everything that He's done in my life, and all that I did, because let me tell you, I'm glad there wasn't some video cameras around when I was doing some things I was doing. And I'm glad there wasn't the social media back then with some of the things I was doing. So I'm glad He can forgive. And I'm glad there's mercy because, otherwise we'd be in trouble.
Definitely. Well, I mean, I guess we pretty much covered everything that I had questions on. I guess the last question I do have for this, and thank you for sharing all this, I appreciate it. What do people need to pay attention to here in Southwest Florida? And what's the landscape of how this stuff is happening? Where are the resources? What have you noticed down here?
Well, I would say even Google me, and not because I'm all that in a bag of chips, but you can find some great podcasts and things that I've done.
Okay.
I've done some for the RN Nurse Mentor podcast. I've done some for TNT Radio, and you can look at those, and I do a lot of education through those. You can go to Nurses United Against Human Trafficking, and you can become a member, and the training is free, the training curriculum with the membership. And you are directly supporting nurses. You are directly supporting our boots on the ground work with survivors. And there's other organizations to where you can get information. The Department of Homeland Security, John Yancey, does a great job. They've actually formed a task force here in Southwest Florida for
really?
commercial sexual exploitation, human trafficking. Yes. Operation Lightshine and John Yancey's team. So Homeland Security is directly working with Sheriff Randbosk and Collier County Sheriff's Office and really going after and tackling this issue. And we need to come together and unite on this front. We can't be divided. A house divided cannot stand. We have to come together in unison. And if you go to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, they have great videos. If you go to the Department of Homeland Security, and there's something called the MIA, M-I-A series. They're really good video series. They're animated that are really great that you can watch. Net Smarts has some great videos out there. Paving the Way Foundation has some good stuff. So get yourself educated. Talk to your kids. Parents, wake up. Your kids know about sex. They know about things that are happening. Okay? Don't keep them in a bubble because the predators, the traffickers, the drug cartels, the gangs, all these folks are counting on you taking a blind eye and just not educating on it, not dealing with it. Have that difficult conversation, especially if you've seen a change in your kids. Let them know this is happening. Thorn, Thorn, they put out some great stuff for social media and sextortion. There's so many Crisis Aid International, so many different organizations. You can find them on the Nurses United Against Human Trafficking, a lot of their community partners, and there'll be tons of resources out there for folks.
Okay.
So
cool. Well, thank you for coming and doing this. I really appreciate it. This is this gave me a good perspective on kind of the mechanisms for how some of this stuff happens, and then also a little bit into the psychology of how some of this happens. Because as somebody who's never like been around it or been the receiving end of it, you almost don't know that it exists, and it almost seems so crazy that it could exist like here in America. You're like, oh, that wouldn't be the case here. Like of course not. Maybe that's somewhere else, but I don't know. And then you just keep hearing about it more and more and how it happens. It's the evil is baffling.
It's there and it's pervasive. We have a moral and ethical obligation to protect God's children, and we have to do it. I'm telling you that we have to protect these kids. We are not. We are failing them. We are failing survivors in so many levels. And trauma is really affecting us as a nation. And, this is a national security risk. It is a risk on so many levels that we really have to be engaged. We have to wake up. We have to wake Congress up and say enough's enough. This session, before you break for August, you get something passed now. The time is now. Anything else is unacceptable. And I can tell you now, God is listening, because remember, he's the number one constituent. God is. And we have to understand that. And we as a society have to say no more, because what does that say about us? In any society that allows its children to be victimized, sold to the highest bidder, what does that say about us? Are we going to say, okay, we're good with that? Or are we're going to be like Babylon and, we know what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah and all those other cities. If we think that it cannot happen to us, we're wrong. We need to, they say in Christian terms, we need to turn and repent as a nation. We need to say, you know what, we've messed up. We didn't know the way, but we are going to do something about it now. And let the past be the past. Let's just move forward as a nation and say, okay, you know what? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what Biden did. Doesn't matter what Trump does. Doesn't matter what Obama did. All the other things they're saying, none of that matters. Stop all that. Stop it. This is about kids being raped as infants. This is about kids killing themselves because they have no way out. And this is about social media, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, and all the other ones knowing and turning a blind eye to it and profiting off of the algorithms and the ads, directly targeting our kids and putting this horrific content in front of them. And they're doing it for money. If you guys are good with that and can sleep at night, great. I can't. And I don't want to be on the other end of that, because I've read Revelations, in the Bible. So, and I can just tell you, God is real. He changed my entire life. He lifted that off of me. The icky is gone. And I am sold out for him. I'm sold out for Jesus, and everything I do is for him. I literally, that's it. Everything I do is for him. I stopped a paying job in so many ways, and I don't have a salary with the ministry. I just do what God has asked me to do. We don't charge survivors for our work because I will not profit off of them. I won't do it. And we need help, we need support, and we need legislation passed. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
Yeah.